The common hall was full of aliens. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species sat at long tables, eating their evening meals. The air was thick with strange smells and stranger sounds. Clicks and whistles and deep rumbles of conversation filled the massive room. Jian sat in her usual spot in the corner. She had not eaten anything. The food on her plate looked gray and tasteless, just like everything else in her life right now. The cubs were across the hall with their families. Kalari tradition demanded that children eat with their parents during formal gatherings. Jian could see them sneaking glances at her between bites. Even from this distance, she could tell they were worried. Aldebaran stood up at the main platform. He was old, even for a Kalari. His fur was silver white, and his movements were slow and careful. But his voice was still strong. "Attention, residents of Harmony's Reach," he announced. "The Assembly has issued an important declaration." The hall fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the elder. Varnth pulled out a formal document and began to read. Due to recent diplomatic incidents involving Earth and its colonies, the Galactic Assembly has determined that human presence on neutral stations poses a security risk. Effective immediately, all human visas are revoked. Human personnel must depart within 72 standard hours. Murmurs spread through the crowd like waves. Some voices sounded happy. Others sounded uncomfortable. A few species had always disliked humans. They thought humans were too emotional, too unpredictable, too dangerous. Eoin kept her face calm. She had practiced this expression all day. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her pain, but across the hall, 7 pairs of glowing eyes were fixed on her. The cubs saw what the adults could not see. They saw her hands gripping the table edge. They saw the slight tremble in her shoulders. They saw the brightness in her eyes that meant tears were close. After the announcement, the hall slowly emptied. Jean waited until most beings had left before standing up. She did not want to talk to anyone. She did not want to hear their false sympathies or their hidden relief. She was almost at the corridor exit when small footsteps caught up with her. "Soft elder!" It was Ricky, running toward her with the other cubs close behind. Their parents called after them, but the children did not stop. Jian turned and knelt down, so she was at their level. This was something Kalari adults never did. Elders always stood tall above children, but Jian had never cared about such rules. "Little ones," she said softly, "you should go back to your families. What does expelled mean?" Ricky demanded. His golden eyes were fierce with worry. Tala pushed forward. "Are you in trouble? Did you do something wrong?" No. Jian shook her head. "I did nothing wrong. It is just politics, adult things, complicated things. But where will you go?" Bomi asked. Her voice was shaking. She was already reaching into her pocket for comfort snacks. Eon took a deep breath. "I have to go home. Back to Earth. The Assembly says I cannot stay here anymore." "But this is your home," Nari said. "You belong here," Soy added. The twins always finished each other's thoughts. Duri said nothing, but he pressed a folded paper into Jian's hand. She opened it. It was a drawing of all of them together under a yellow sun. Earth's sun. Like he already knew what was coming. Hani did not understand any of it. She was too young for politics and expulsion orders. All she knew was that her soft elder looked sad. She climbed into Jian's lap and wrapped her small arms around her neck. "I do not want you to go," Hani whispered. Eon held her tight. "I do not want to go either, little star." They stayed like that for a long moment. The other cubs gathered close, pressing against Jian from all sides. A pile of fur and warmth and love. From down the corridor, Elder Varnth watched. His expression was impossible to read. He had served on the Assembly Council for 40 cycles. He had seen countless species come and go. He had witnessed wars and treaties and betrayals, but he had never seen anything quite like this. A human woman kneeling on the cold station floor, surrounded by Kalari cubs who clung to her like she was their only anchor in a storm. It troubled him in ways he did not fully understand. Eventually, Jian stood up. She gently untangled herself from the cubs and wiped her eyes. "I need you all to be brave," she said. "Can you do that for me?" 7 small heads nodded. "I will come to the learning pod tomorrow. I have gifts for each of you. Something to remember me by." Her voice cracked slightly on the last words. "We do not need gifts to remember you," Tala said firmly. "We will never forget you." Jian smiled, though her heart was breaking. "Go to your parents now." It is late. The cubs left slowly, looking back again and again. Hanny had to be carried by Ricky because she refused to walk away. That night, after the station lights dimmed to simulate nighttime, the cubs gathered in the maintenance tunnels. It was their secret meeting place, a small room full of pipes and wires where no adult ever came. "This is not fair," Tala said angrily. "The soft elder did nothing wrong. Why should she leave?" "Because the assembly is stupid," Nari declared. "Very stupid," Soy agreed. Bomi was stress-eating dried protein snacks. "Maybe her Earth people will let her come back after the politics get better?" "That could take years," Ricky said darkly. "Decades, even. By then, we will be grown. We will not need her anymore." "I will always need her," Honey said quietly. Everyone went silent. It was rare for the youngest to speak in their meetings. Duri pulled out a piece of paper and started drawing. He drew a transport ship. He drew the cubs inside it. He drew the yellow sun of Earth at the end of the journey. Ricky looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he looked at his siblings and friends. 6 faces looked back at him, waiting for him to lead them. "If the soft elder has to leave," Ricky announced slowly, "then we are going with her." "We cannot," Bomi said nervously. "Our parents would never allow it. The assembly would never allow it." "Then, we do not ask for permission," Ricky replied. His voice was calm but determined. "We are cubs. Everyone underestimates cubs. They think we are small and helpless and stupid. We will use that." Tala's eyes widened with excitement. "You mean we should sneak onto her transport?" "I mean we should do whatever it takes to stay with our family." Ricky put his hand in the center of their circle. "Are you with me?" One by one, 6 small hands joined his. The plan had begun. The cubs had 48 hours to prepare for the greatest adventure of their young lives. Tala took charge of research. She was the smartest of the group, always asking questions, always wanting to learn more. She spent hours at the station's information terminals, reading everything she could find about Earth. What she discovered horrified her. "Humans cannot see in the dark," she reported to the others in their secret tome meeting. "Their eyes do not glow. They are completely blind at night. How do they hunt?" Nari asked. "They make artificial light. Little suns that they carry around." Tala shook her head in disbelief. "Also, they have no claws. Their fingers are soft and weak." "No claws?" Bomi looked at her own sharp nails with concern. "How do they climb things? How do they defend themselves?" "They use tools. They build weapons because their bodies have none." Tala continued reading from her notes. "They cannot run very fast either. Most prey animals on their planet can outrun them easily. Oh, and if they spin around too many times, they fall over because their balance is terrible." The cubs exchanged worried glances. How are humans even alive? Soy wondered out loud. "They are very stubborn," Tala concluded. "They survive by refusing to give up, even when they should." This made the cubs feel both better and worse. Their soft elder was apparently from a species of soft, weak. half-blind creatures who somehow conquered their planet through pure determination. It was inspiring and terrifying at the same time. Bomi handled supplies. She was practical and careful, and she understood that the journey would be long. Humans, she had learned, needed to eat 3 times every single day, sometimes more. This seemed excessive to Kalari, who only needed 1 good meal daily. Thought she started collecting food packets from every meal. She stuffed them into her sleeping pouch, which grew heavier and heavier. Dried protein bars, fruit concentrates, nutrient crackers, anything that would not spoil. We need enough for at least 10 days, she calculated. That means 210 meals for the soft elder alone, plus emergency snacks. That is a lot of snacks, Nari observed. Humans are hungry creatures, Bomi replied seriously. I will not let her starve. The twins took on the most dangerous mission. Official documents. Nari and Soi were experts at causing trouble. They had been sneaking into places they should not be since they could walk. Now, they used those skills for something important. They crept into the administrative office when no one was watching. They found the cabinet where travel permits were stored. They carefully removed several blank forms and smuggled them back to the tunnels. The problem was filling them out. What should I write? Nari asked, holding a crayon she had stolen from the learning pod. Make it look official, Soi suggested. Use big words. Nari nodded and began writing in her best handwriting. This paper says the cubs can go anywhere they want because they are very important and special. Signed, the boss of everything. She drew several stars around the edges for decoration. Soi examined the finished document. It looks perfect. No one will question this. They were 7 and 8 years old. They had no idea that their forgery would not fool anyone. Meanwhile, Duri continued his silent mission. Every morning, he woke up early and drew a new picture. Then he crept to Jian's quarters and slipped it under her door dot. The first picture showed the cubs waving goodbye to a transport ship. It was sad. The second picture showed the cubs on a transport ship, flying toward a yellow sun. It was hopeful. The third picture showed Jian and all 7 cubs standing together on a green hill under blue sky. It was a wish. The fourth picture showed a Kalari word written in careful letters. Family. Duri did not speak much. He never had. But his picture said everything his voice could not. Jian found each drawing when she woke up. She did not know they were part of a plan. She thought they were just goodbyes from a child who expressed himself through art. She pinned each one to her wall and cried. On the second day, Jian visited the learning pod one final time. She carried a bag full of books, one for each cub. They were collections of Korean folktales, translated into Galactic Common. Stories about tigers and rabbits and kind woodcutters and magical creatures. Stories that her own grandmother had told her when she was small. These were my favorite stories when I was your age, Jian explained as she handed them out. Whenever you read them, think of me. The cubs clutched their books tightly. They did not tell her that they would not need books to remember her. They did not tell her about the bags they were packing or the plans they were making. Ricky received a story about a loyal dog who waited for his master every day. He understood the meaning immediately. Tala received a story about a clever girl who outsmarted a dragon. She smiled at this. Bom. I received a story about a generous woman who shared her food with hungry travelers. She thought this was very appropriate. The twins received matching. Stories about sisters who were stronger together than apart. Duri received a story about a boy who painted pictures that came to life. And Hani received a story about a lost kitten who found her way home. Will you read mine to me? Hani asked, holding up her book. Jian's heart ached. Of course, little star. She gathered all the cubs' clothes and began to read. Her voice was soft and warm, and the cubs pressed against her. Memorizing the sound of it. In the doorway, Elder Vorant appeared. He watched the human woman surrounded by Kellery children, reading stories from her distant planet. The cubs were completely absorbed, their eyes wide, their ears perked forward. Vorinth had raised many cubs himself. He knew what love looked like. This human loved these children. It was obvious in every gesture, every word, every gentle touch. And the children loved her back. They loved her in a way that Kellery cubs rarely loved anyone outside their immediate family. It was wrong. According to tradition, children should respect adults, not love them. Elders should be obeyed, not embraced. But watching this scene, Vorinth began to wonder if tradition was always right. He left without making a sound. That night, Hanny showed her adventure bag to her father. She was too young to understand secrecy. "Look," she announced proudly. "I am ready for the journey." Her father looked inside the bag. 3 socks, none of them matching. A half-eaten protein bar with teeth marks. And a drawing from Dury showing the cubs and Gian standing under a yellow sun. He took the bag to Elder Vorinth immediately. Vorinth examined the contents for a long time. Then he looked at the drawing, at the 7 small figures holding hands with one larger figure. "Bring the cubs to me," he said quietly. "All of them. And bring the human woman as well." The small rebellion had been discovered. Gian walked to Elder Vorinth's chambers with her heart pounding in her chest. She had been summoned. No explanation given. Just a formal request that she appear before the Kellery elder immediately. She knew this could not be good news. Humans were already being expelled. What more could they do to her? Arrest her? Punish her for some unknown crime? The corridors of the station felt longer than usual. Every step brought her closer to whatever waited for her. She tried to keep her breathing steady. She tried to remember that she had done nothing wrong. The door to Vorinth's chambers opened automatically as she approached. Inside, the room was large and filled with soft cushions and warm light. It smelled like incense and old paper. Elder Vorinth sat in the center of the room on a raised platform. His silver-white fur glowed in the dim light. His ancient eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Sit," he commanded. Gian sat on a cushion across from him. She folded her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. For a long moment, Vorinth said nothing. He simply studied her, the way a scientist might study an interesting specimen. Finally, he spoke. "What did you do to them?" Gian blinked in confusion. "I am sorry." "What did I do to whom?" "The cubs." Vorinth's voice was flat and hard. "They are planning to leave with you. They packed bags. They attempted to forge travel documents." The smallest one showed her father drawings of Earth, as if it were already her destination. Gian felt the blood drain from her face. The cubs had been planning to escape? To follow her? "I did not know," she whispered. "I never asked them to do this. I never suggested they should come with me. That is what troubles me." Vorinth leaned forward slightly. "You did not ask. You did not demand. You did nothing that I can identify as manipulation or persuasion. Yet 7 Kellery cubs are willing to abandon their homes, their families, their entire species to follow a human woman to a distant planet." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "So, I ask you again, what did you do to them?" Gian searched for an answer. What had she done? She had played with them. She had talked to them. She had listened when they were sad and laughed when they were funny. She had made sure they ate properly and slept enough. She had handheld them when they cried and celebrated when they succeeded. She had just treated them like children, like people. "I did not do anything special," she said finally. "I just cared for them." "How?" "I do not understand the question." "I do not understand the question." Vorinth made a sound of frustration. "On Kellery, children are raised to be strong and independent. We do not coddle them. We do not indulge their emotions. We teach them to stand tall and face the universe without weakness. That sounds lonely, Jian said quietly. Voranth's ears flattened slightly. It is how we have survived for thousands of cycles. Perhaps. Jian met his eyes directly. But I was raised differently. On Earth, we believe that children need more than strength. They need warmth. They need touch. They need to know that they are loved not for what they achieve, but simply for who they are. You hugged them, Voranth said, as if this were an accusation. Yes, you knelt to their level. Yes, you let the smallest one sleep in your arms. Yes. Jian's voice grew stronger. I did all of these things. I would do them again, because those cubs deserve to feel safe. They deserve to feel valued. They deserve to know that someone in this cold station actually cared about their happiness. Voranth was silent for a long time. You have caused significant problems, he said eventually. When news of your expulsion spread, the cubs were not the only ones who reacted. Several Kilari adults have filed formal objections with the assembly. Parents, workers, even council members. Jian's eyes widened. Why? Because they saw what you gave their children. They saw the changes. Cubs who were once quiet and withdrawn became confident and curious. Cubs who struggled with studies became eager to learn. Cubs who never smiled began laughing every day. Voranth stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered in the endless black. The assembly fears humans, he said quietly. Not because you are strong or dangerous in the traditional sense. They fear you because of what you do to others. What do we do? Voranth turned to face her. His ancient eyes held something she had never seen before. Something almost like respect. You make them love you. The words hung in the air between them. Not through tricks or manipulation, Voranth continued. Simply through being who you are. Through your touch, your laughter, your terrible jokes, your willingness to stay up late when a child has nightmares. You give without expecting return. You love without demanding anything back. He walked closer to her. This is terrifying to species who have survived through caution and distance. If others begin to love humans, they might start to think like humans. They might start to feel like humans. The entire structure of the assembly is built on logic and hierarchy and careful separation of emotions from decisions. And humans are too emotional, Jian said. Understanding now. You are chaos wrapped in soft skin, Voranth agreed. You are a virus of affection that spreads wherever you go. Jian did not know whether to laugh or cry. I was just taking care of children. No. Voranth shook his head slowly. You were teaching them a different way to exist. A way that challenges everything we thought we knew about proper development and proper relationships. Before Jian could respond, an alarm began wailing throughout the station. Voranth's communicator crackled to life. Elder, the Kilari cubs have escaped their quarters. They are heading toward docking bay 7. Jian's heart stopped. The cubs. They were running. She was on her feet before she knew she had moved. She ran out of Voranth's chambers and down the corridor, following the sounds of the alarm. Her legs burned and her lungs ached, but she did not slow down. Docking bay 7. That was where her transport was waiting. The cubs were trying to reach her ship. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life. When she finally reached the docking bay, she saw chaos. Station security had formed a circle around 7 small figures. The cubs were huddled together. Their fur bristled with fear and defiance. Around them lay scattered bags, spilled snacks, and crumpled papers that were obviously fake documents. Little Hani was crying. Her wails echoed through the vast metal chamber, and at the front of the group, standing between his siblings and the security guards, was Ricky. His claws were extended. His golden eyes blazed with desperate courage. He was trying to be a warrior, though he was only 12 cycles old and barely reached the guards' waists. "You cannot take her," Ricky shouted at the guards. "She is ours." Jean pushed through the security line before anyone could stop her. She dropped to her knees and gathered the cubs into her arms, all of them, as many as she could hold. They clung to her like she was the only solid thing in a universe that was falling apart. "Soft elder," Hani sobbed. "Do not leave. Please, do not leave." Jian held them tight and let her own tears fall freely. "My brave, foolish, wonderful little ones," she whispered. "What have you done?" Behind her, she heard heavy footsteps approaching. Elder Varnth had arrived, and everything was about to change. The docking bay had fallen silent except for Hanny's quiet sobs. Security guards stood in a wide circle, unsure what to do. Their weapons were designed for criminals and threats, not for a human woman holding 7 crying cubs. Jian kept her arms wrapped around as many of the children as she could reach. Ricky pressed against her left side, his warrior pose forgotten. Tala clung to her right arm. The twins had buried their faces in her back. Bomi was clutching her bag of spilled snacks, tears streaming down her furry cheeks. Dory stood slightly apart, holding a final drawing he had never delivered Dodd, and Hanny sat in Jiyun's lap. Tiny arms locked around her neck, refusing to let go for anything in the universe. Elder Varnth walked through the ring of security guards. His silver-white fur caught the harsh lights of the docking bay. His face was unreadable. The guards straightened to attention as he passed. Everyone on the station knew that Varinth's word was law among the Kalari. He stopped a few steps away from the pile of cubs and human Dodd for a long moment. No one spoke. No one moved. The whole station seemed to hold its breath. Then Varinth did something that no one expected. He knelt down. A Kalari elder, one of the most respected leaders in the entire delegation, lowered himself to the ground until he was at the same level as the cubs and the human woman who held them. Gasps echoed through the docking bay. In Kalari culture, elders never knelt. It was unthinkable. It suggested equality with those below them, and elders were never equal to cubs. Varinth ignored the shocked sounds around him. His ancient eyes focused on Jian's face. "Tell me," he said quietly, "what would you do if you could stay?" Jian blinked through her tears. "What? If the assembly reversed their decision, if you were allowed to remain on this station, what would you do?" She did not hesitate. "I would keep caring for them. I would teach them and love them and help them grow into whoever they want to be. I would be here every time they needed me, for as long as they needed me. Even though they are not your species? Even though they are not your blood?" Jion looked down at the 7 cubs pressed against her. 7 different faces. 7 different personalities. 7 hearts that had chosen her as their family. "Family is not just blood," she said firmly. "Family is who you choose. Who chooses you? And these cubs chose me 3 years ago. I chose them too. Whatever happens next, nothing will change that." Hanny lifted her head from Jian's shoulder. Her golden fur was matted with tears, but her eyes were suddenly fierce. "She is our soft elder," Hani said to Varinth. "She belongs to us." Ricky nodded, his voice rough. "We will not let you take her away. We will fight," Tala added, though her voice shook. "We will bite and scratch," the twins promised together. "We have supplies," Bomi said, gesturing at her scattered snacks. "We can survive for a long time." Dory said nothing. He simply held up his final drawing. It showed the cubs and Jian standing together under a yellow sun, but he had added something new. Around them, he had drawn a circle of older Kalari figures. Adults, parents, even an elder with silver-white fur. A whole community gathered around 1 human and 7 cubs. Varinth looked at the drawing for a long time. Something shifted in his ancient eyes. He stood up slowly and turned to face the watching crowd. Security guards, Kalari adults, representatives from other species who had gathered to watch the commotion. "I am making a decision," Varanth announced. His voice carried through the entire docking bay. "This is not sanctioned by the Assembly. This may cause political complications. I accept full responsibility." He paused, then continued. "The cubs will accompany the human woman to her transport. They will say their farewells properly, with dignity and time. No guards will interfere. No one will rush them. This is the Kalari way now." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not the Kalari way. This had never been the Kalari way. But no one argued with Varanth. Jian slowly stood, helping the cubs to their feet. Her legs were shaky, but her heart was full. "Thank you," she whispered to Vor, in thought. The elder nodded once. Perhaps it is time for some traditions to change. Perhaps children need more than strength. Perhaps we all need more than we thought. The walk to the transport was the longest of Jian's life. She held Hani in her arms. The other cubs walked beside her, pressed as close as they could get. No one spoke. There were no words for this kind of goodbye dot at the entrance to the transport. Jian finally stopped. She set Hani down gently and knelt one final time to face all 7 cubs. "I need you to be brave now," she said. "Not the hard kind of brave, where you pretend nothing hurts. The real kind of brave, where you feel the pain but keep going anyway. Will you come back?" Ricky asked. His voice cracked. "I do not know," Jian admitted. "The universe is complicated. Politics are difficult. But I will try. I will spend every day trying to find my way back to you." She reached into her bag and pulled out 7 small items. Bracelets made of woven thread, in colors she had dyed herself using materials from the station. Each one had a small metal charm attached. "On Earth, we give these to people we love," she explained as she tied one around each small wrist. "When you wear them, remember that you are never alone. Part of my heart stays with you, always." The cubs looked at their bracelets with wonder. Such a simple gift, just thread and metal, but it meant everything. Tala pressed something into Jian's hand. It was a small device, barely bigger than a button. "A tracking beacon," Tala whispered. "I borrowed it from the navigation center. Do not ask how. It will help you find your way back to us." A message was stored in the beacon's memory. Jian read it through fresh tears. "So you can always find your way home to us." She hugged each cub one final time. Long hugs, desperate hugs. The kind of hugs that tried to squeeze a lifetime of love into a few seconds. Then she stood, walked into the transport, and did not look back. She could not look back. If she looked back, she would never leave. The doors closed behind her. Through the small window, she could see 7 small figures standing in a line. They did not wave. They did not cry. They stood tall and proud, the way Kalari were supposed to stand, but they did not leave. Even as the transport lifted off, even as it passed through the docking bay shields, even as it became a small dot against the stars, 7 cubs stayed at that window, watching. Elder Vorn stood behind them. He did not tell them to leave. He did not remind them of duties or traditions. He simply stood with them, sharing their vigil. "She will return," Hani announced with absolute certainty. "How do you know?" Voranth asked. Hani looked at him as if the answer was the most obvious thing in the universe. "Because we are her cubs," she said simply. "Humans always come back for their cubs." Voranth looked at the tiny gold-furred cub, then at the distant star that was Jian's transport disappearing into the void. "Yes," he said softly. "I believe they do." On the transport, alone in her small cabin, Jian held 7 drawings. 7 books with notes scrawled in the margins by small hands, and 1 tracking beacon that promised to guide her home. Earth was ahead of her, but home was behind her, growing smaller by the second. She pressed her hand against the cold window and made a promise to the stars. She would return, no matter how long it took, no matter what obstacles stood in her way. She would find her way back to 7 small hearts who had chosen her as their family, because that is what humans do. They love, they lose, and they never ever give up. The stars blurred as the transport jumped to faster than light speed. Ji-young closed her eyes and let herself feel everything. The grief, the love, the hope, the determination. Somewhere behind her, 7 cubs were doing the same thing. And somehow, across the vast emptiness of space, they could still feel each other. Still connected by threads of love that no distance could ever break. This was not the end of their story. This was just the beginning.